This bag right here, back when I sold, was one of my top requested bags. And that's what we're making today. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't been here before, my name is Tracy, and this is a DIY upcycling channel. We're going to create that highly requested bag. Everything's upcycled, so of course it won't be exactly the same. Let's get started. We're going to get started by making a simple pattern, and we're starting with a square that is 11 by 11 inches. I want my pattern to be a U shape, so I'm going to take this piece, fold it in half, and make a little curve here to cut out. I want my bag to have a U-shaped flap, and so I'm making a pattern for that. And this one is 9 inches across and 8 inches tall. Again, fold that in half and make a curve. For the body of the bag and the flap, I am going to use sort of a decorator upholstery weight fabric, and it's kind of a warm beigey color. If you want to use a thinner fabric, that's okay. Just back it with a fusible medium weight interfacing. So I took the larger pattern and I cut out 2 pieces, and then with the smaller pattern, I cut out 1 piece right there. I had a lacy scarf that looks like this. And once I got these pieces cut out, what I did was lay it on the scarf and I roughly cut a square around it. And I did that for each piece. I'm going to lay these pieces of lace over top of the fabric. Now I'm pinning this onto the fabric, and then I'm going to sew. I can see the fabric through the lace, and I want to follow that fabric around, staying close to the edge, less than 1/4 of an inch, and I will use a running stitch and black thread. When I say running stitch, I just mean straight stitch. I can just trim that lace off. I want to work on the flap, and I'm going to hand sew all these little treasures on. This is a necklace. And right at the top here is where I'll sew. So I'm going to have to take my wire cutters right here and clip that so that we have nothing attached down here. So that'll be sort of a fringe there. I have a piece of a necklace. You just want to make sure you have some holes in which to stick your needle, like here, all over. This one's a really good one to sew, and I'll match my thread to this and not to my bag. So I'll use like a silver colored thread. This is a brooch that I will pin on. I wish it had little holes to sew, but I'll pin it on and sew around here just in case it comes unclipped. It doesn't fall off and get lost. A little earring, cluster earring, vintage. I'm going to cut off the back and sew that. A little brooch. I'll pin. I like to pin these and then sew them. Another brooch. A little pearl. And a mother of pearl button that I'll use black thread to sew that on. I didn't sew this guy on because I didn't think this would flip up nicely when I have to turn it inside out. So I'm going to remove it until I get this piece lined, and then I'll add it and do one stitch area there. Now what I want to do is trim this piece in fringe and the front of the bag piece in fringe. In the original bag that I showed you, I used leather fringe, and I cut that from suede and leather jackets from the thrift store, and I have quite a few videos on how to do that. I'm going to link one of those down in my description because on this one, I'm going to use sort of a chainette fringe cut from a scarf. I'm going to do this one after the flap because there's a few more things I'd like to add to that. So I need to get everything out of the way, and this will look like this, but I can't sew it on like that. I have to put everything on the inside and sew this around the edge with the fringe on the inside. And I'll do about a 1/4 inch seam allowance using a zigzag stitch since this is so kind of wispy, and I want to try to catch as much of that as I can. And I'll start about 1 inch down from the top because we'll be doing more sewing up here and there's no need to have that in the way. So I won't pin this or anything. I'll just go to my machine, start, zigzag stitch all the way to 1 inch from the top over here. I'm going to set this aside for a bit and work on the front of the bag. The first thing I have here is a braid of black and white yarn, and I want that right there. So what I have to do is I'm kind of ignoring this knot. It'll end up getting cut off about 2 inches down from the top. I'm going to lay this braid on the inside, and with a straight stitch, just about a 1/4 inch in, I'm going to go over it a few times with a stitch. Now I can cut that little knot off. I have a chain, just a necklace remnant, that's 18 inches long, and I want it not equal at the bottom, just a little off center, and I want to sew that about 4 inches down from the top. So what I did was just got a real narrow ribbon. I didn't have black, so I'm using navy. Black would have been better. And I cut a piece that's about 5 inches long. I will end up trimming it, but 5 inches gives me something easy to work with. You don't want to cut it too small and struggle with that. I'll cut a little point. Slip it through one of these rings. And then I'm going to grab it like this. Just kind of fold it on itself. And now this is how I will attach the necklace. I'll lay it inside about 4 inches down from the top. I'm going to bring this in maybe 1 inch so that it'll clear my presser foot, and I'll sew right there, you know, a few good stitches because this is a chain a little heavier than the braid. At the end of these chains, I want to add this pretty tassel and this cute little elephant, one there and one there. So I just have a kit of assorted jump rings, and I'm grabbing a couple silver ones and my jewelry making pliers and attach those. To this side, I want to add a piece of this kind of a broken pearl necklace. So I stuck a ribbon through a loop towards the top like I did this, and I'm going to sew it on. I'd say 2.5 inches down. Sew it the same way we did this one. I want to sew the fringe on. So what I have to do is tuck everything inside here. And I'll take this to my machine and sew the fringe on just like we did the flap, with the fringes facing in, a zigzag stitch all the way around the edge. Now I'm holding the flap against the front of the bag, and you can start to sort of get a sense of what this will look like. And now I want to do a little something to the back side of the bag. I have a rhinestone necklace. I think it's pretty old. That looks like this. And I clipped the clasp off one side. So now I have two ends that look like this. And I'm going to stick a ribbon, one of those ribbons, through both of those holes. One on this side and one on this side. And then on my bag, I marked down from the top, this is the back side, 2 inches, and I made a mark on both sides. Now I'm going to take this to my machine, and I'm going to sew this end right here and this end right here. I want to work on the lining. So I went back to those same pieces that we cut the body of the bag out of, and I cut a piece for the flap for the lining, and I'm using tapestry fabric. If you're using like a cotton, like quilter's weight, a thinner fabric, you'll want to back that with fusible medium weight interfacing. And then I cut out 2 like this. And we're going to do pockets later, because right now I want to work on the flap. Okay, now what I need to do is put all my fringes inside the bag. Any beads, all the stuff. And now I'm going to take the lining piece and I'm going to put it together, right sides together, and then I'm going to pin this on. I don't need to pin the top, just around the sides. When you have a curve, you have to clip these edges, make little clips close to that line so that it lays smoothly when you turn it right side out. Now I can turn this right side out and give it a good press. We have an open end here, just right over top, close to the edge. I'm going to sew that shut. Now what I want to do is attach the flap to the back side of the purse, and this is my back. So what I did was measure across the top. This is 8 inches, and I found the center, and I stuck a pin. It's 4 inches. And then I did the same over here. It was 10.5 inches across. I stuck a pin in the middle at 5.25 inches. I'm going to line up, I'm going to lay this right sides together on the back of this bag. And I'm going to line up those pins, take them out, and pin these together. Now I'm going to sew the flap on, and I'll come down about 1/4 inch, go across with a straight stitch. When I'm done sewing that one, I'll come back, go right over top of the same stitch I made, and do it twice so it's extra durable. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to press this seam that I just made, and I'm going to protect my lace with parchment paper. Now what I want to do is sew the bag together, the front and the back. I have the front of the bag, well, actually the flap and the back of the bag all opened up. I need to tuck everything inside the bag to free up those perimeters. I'm going to bring this one on top of this one, right sides together, because this has less stuff to mess with. So right over top, and then I'm going to line up these edges and pin them. I'm going to sew from here to here, just like I did the flap. Double stitch for durability. I am going to use a skinny men's black tie for my strap. I'm going to take this tie. This is way too long. I think it's like 57 inches or something like that, which might work for taller people, but for me, I like my straps a lot shorter. Okay, I'm trying to find that back end. What I like to do is put my strap over my shoulder. It's going to be a crossbody bag. And then grab my bag. I just get a feel, hold my strap where I want it. Okay, so I know I want mine. I'm marking it with my thumb. Okay, there's where I marked. It's about 47 inches. I'm going to slide my pin down about an inch. Give me room for seam allowance. And then I'm going to cut the fat end of the tie off. Now, I want to do one thing to this tie, kind of fun, before I sew it onto my bag. I went to just my scrap jewelry and stuff, and I found rings like this, and here's a different style. And then, with my jump rings and pliers, I added little charms to these. And I'm not sure, I tried this one on. I don't think I like that, but I'm going to slide these on to my tie, and I'm going to adjust them once I get my purse all made, but right now I just want them on there. A ring. Now I can just sew the strap onto the bag. So what I'm going to do is open up this bag, clear the stuff out of the way, and I'm going to go to my two ends of the tie. And I will sew one end to the side top of the bag. So here's my side seam. Here's the top edge of my bag. I'm going to lay my end of my tie, center it over that side seam, line it up with the top, right sides together, and stick a couple pins in there. I'm going to make sure my tie isn't twisted, and I'm going to take the other end and do the same thing. Side seam, line it up, pin it. Now I can sew these on. I'll go over the tie with a straight stitch about 5 times, coming down about 1/4 of an inch on both sides. What it's looking like so far. And now I want to add the lining. These are the 2 lining pieces that I cut out, and now I want to add 2 pockets. So I made a pattern that is 6 3/4 inches across and 7 inches tall, and I cut out 2 pieces of that tapestry fabric, and then I cut out 2 pieces of thinner cotton. I'm going to line the pockets of the lining because tapestry fabric tends to fray quite a bit, and I just want to protect the inside from being all frayed and weird. What I'll do is take the lining fabric, lay it on top of the tapestry, right sides together, and pin them all around 4 sides, except at the bottom I'm going to leave about a 3-inch gap so that I can turn this right side out. Now that everything is pinned, I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together. I'll sew around the entire thing except for the 2 gaps that I need at the bottom. 1/4 inch seam allowance, start at this pin, stop here. Same on this side. Now clip those corners so everything's nice and smooth and pointy when you turn it right side out. Now you can turn them right side out. I'm going to give them a good press, and this open bottom, I'm going to tuck those in and press those nice and tidy. I want to pin and sew my pockets on. I already pinned this one on. Basically, I just center it this way, and I come down 2.5 inches from the top. And I'm just going to pin the 4 corners. Now sew the sides and the bottom, staying close to the edges, double stitch for durability. Pockets all sewn. And now I want to add some magnetic snap closures. I'm turning my lining pieces upside down because I'm going to be working right here. I have this assorted pack of different colored bronze, silver, and gold closures. I'll link this down in my description. I love this pack. It's lasted me so long. I'm going to use silver since a lot of my items are silver on my bag. So I'm going to come in here and I need to find, I call them innies. It has like a little hole. And then I need an outie, so that'll go in there. And these are strong. They're nice snaps. And then I need 2 backs, and all the backs are silver because it doesn't matter. They're hidden inside the bag. I'm using this center, see these have a center circle and then 2 bars on the side. I'm using the center circle to do my measurements. And I came down 1.5 inches and I centered it this way. Now I can take, I like using a marker. If this isn't showing up, I also have some white tailor's chalk I can use. I am going to mark those 2 sidebars. And I'm going to cut these right away while I can still see them where I know where they are. So my 2 sidebars are there. I'm going to pinch this a little bit, and I'm going to make a itty bitty snip. Don't go too big, because you can always go bigger. We need something to put these 2 tabs through. If you go too big, then it's loose. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that through now. They're kind of hard to see. And it doesn't matter which one goes in first. I'm putting the innie in, and then I'm going to flip this over. And now what I like to do is take a piece of denim, just rough cut, and take one of these, set it in the center, mark the 2 sidebars, and make a little snip there as well. I feel like this helps protect this lining fabric from those tabs. And then I'm going to set that right over top of the tabs that I poked through the upholstery fabric. And then I can take the back, set it on the tabs, And I like these little jewelry pliers because they have rubber ends. And I kind of push these down with them. And I'm pressing mine out. Some people press them in. And then I'm going to shake the camera and give those a little tap. All right. The first one's in. That's what it looks like on the front. And now I'm going to do the same thing on this side, only with this one. I can sew my lining pieces together. I'm going to put them right sides together. Sometimes I snap that, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to pin the U shape and leave the top open. I pin from here to here and here to here. I'm leaving about a 5 to 6 inch space open, and you'll see why later. I won't sew this area right here. So to sew it, I'm going to do 1/4 inch seam allowance, double stitch it for durability. Now I can turn this right side out just to press it because it will need to go inside out again, but I want to press it this way. Now I want to add the lining to the bag. The first thing that I have to do is open up my bag, the flap, and stick that flap down behind. All I want to see is the opening to this bag. Straps are down. And then I'm going to turn my lining inside out again. The bottom of the lining, that opening, will go over the bag first. I like to stick my hand in there, grab the bag, and pull it through. I'm going to pull this all the way through. And I want to line the top of the bag up with the top of the lining. Now the next step is important to make those magnets line up perfectly on the inside. We need to pin this all together. The first thing you do though is go to the side seam here of your lining and the inside side seam of the bag, and you want to make sure those line up. That ensures your magnets line up on the inside. And then I'll stick a couple pins in there to hold that. And then I'll come to the opposite side, do the same thing, side seam, couple pins. Once you have those done, pinning the rest is easy peasy. You just continue pinning, lining up those edges. Now the entire top is pinned. I'm going to slide it into my machine, and with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew the lining to the bag. And I'll just single stitch this because we're going to do a top stitch. Now I can pull this lining up over the bag. And now what I want to do is give that lining another little press, and this time I'm going to tuck these in so that there's a nice, it's the bottom of the lining inside the bag. Just tuck them in the best you can and give them a press. I am going to take this to my machine, and just that open end there, staying close to the bottom, I'm going to run 2 stitches along there to close that up. I can fit the lining inside the bag where it's supposed to be. Press that lining seam. Now kind of flip my bag around and get in there the best I can. So now I want to top stitch the lining and the bag to get the bag fabric together. And I'll line the edge side up with my presser foot. I feel like that gives me the straightest line. So important here. The strap, you will get tangled up if you don't do this, because I've done it. So slide your strap underneath the needle and get it this way. And then your flap has to be open as well. And then once I have everything sewn, I like to open this flap back up, kind of give these a little tidying up, kind of fold them like that, close the flap, and then I'm going to press all along the top, including where this strap is, right along here. Almost done. I have one more thing I want to add, and it's this purse charm tassel. Has little charms made of lace. I have a tutorial on these, and I'll link that down in my description. I just saw it sitting over there, and I thought it would be a great addition to this. So remember those little rings we stuck on the straps? This has a big lobster claw clasp on it. Well, hello, Tigger. I'm going to clip it right onto there. What a great little bag. So cute. I'm definitely going to bring this in closer in a little bit so that you can see the details, because this is all about the details. It's pretty lightweight. This is a great little bag. I want to talk a second about, I used a lot of my vintage jewelry and brooches and things like that, a lot on just one little bag. My niece watches my videos, and one time she said to me, because she's artsy and she dabbles in upcycling a little bit, and she said, Tracy, do you know, or Aunt Tracy, do you know what I learned from your videos? And I was like, no, tell me. And she said, use the good stuff. Why have these beautiful things sitting around and not use them? I find that I'm always picking up something beautiful. And then what are you saving it for? Something special? Shouldn't all your pieces be special and fabulous? So that's kind of my theory. I'm going to bring it in closer. I thank you so much for watching.